and say it's over here, it's better to fix those two and get that done. Then you've got more options when you have to take care of moving people back and forth in our courthouse. The other thing is that we have had plans prepared to remodel the Scott Street Annex, primarily the first floor area, but to update it and make it more customer accessible. The original lower tax rate publication was submitted and would allow, we could come in and raise it. We have never done that. Generally speaking, we have advertised the rollback rate. Didn't advertise that because the court had really wanted to stay closer. But when I needed that other $1 million, I think, to provide those things I just told you about in the budget, then as the person responsible for that, I added that additional tax rate on there and directed for it to be republished so it would be out there and available to the public, not just kind of all of a sudden come in out of left field at that vote. After this year, tax rates will not be raised above 3.5% without voter approval unless there has been a disaster declaration. Given this, the limitation imposed by the legislature as well as the 80-cent constitutional cap facing Wichita County, the county will reach that rate in 6 to 8 years. At that point, taxes cannot be raised above that. The only other fund we have is the Special Road and Bridge Fund, but you have to, in taxing in that has to be done for Road and Bridge. The commissioners asked that we transfer some of the expense in the general fund to Road and Bridge, and that tax was taken from a penny and a half to, I'm all of a sudden losing it, 4 cents? 4, okay, I got that right. To 4 cents, which is the majority of the tax increase. The other, that comes in, the total rate then adds that in. The use of voter-approved 1954 optional road and bridge tax is only transferring. It doesn't lower your taxes. It only transfers where that money comes from and where it's spent. While the budget has some proposed pay raises in some departments, it does not have an across-the-board increase except for the very lowest positions. Some additional positions were justified or retained in some departments. This budget is a working document, and between now and Monday, September 23rd, where the budget and the tax rate will be acted upon. After some things that Mr. Hillman brought to us the other day, we sat down, and I was sorry I couldn't sit down with you and Mr. Wall and Curtis at that time. We met again yesterday for about 2.5 hours with the auditor, went back through looking at the current fund balances, looking at the anticipated revenues, and going back through all the personnel issues. We've still got some work to clean up between now and that November 23rd, but some of it was just as simple as rounding. We have 26 pay periods. Somebody's supposed to be paid $72,000 a year, and that doesn't divide exactly by 26. So we cleared that up so the budget will have that amount. They will make the adjustment on the last pay period. I did say that some of the increases were caused by legislative action. The most significant one of those was when the Sandra Bland Act was passed after the young lady who killed herself in the Wharton County Jail. Waller, excuse me. I knew, thank you. That other case was the guns in the courthouse case was Wharton. There we go. Thank you. At any rate, that expense for just that contract per year is $477,000 to meet that requirement. In addition to that, we pay Helen Farabee Center another $130,000. They provide backup for that, but they provide for the general mental health care of people in Wichita County and 20 other counties. So that's big. But part of what we do is jail care, so to meet that, it pushes us towards the $500,000 level with what's devoted then to the county jail. Another raise, and I'm glad Judge King is here, and I'm glad the legislature passed a longevity pay plan for both district and county court law judges. Their pay is sorely behind what they would have made likely in private practice. The state gave them 27.
It's a longevity supplement.
Yeah.
If you've been elected and served 4 years, it's 14,000. If it's, you've served 2 terms, it's 28,000.
28, yeah, and I asked Deb to correct, she came out with yours as 27 and 98 cents to get that 26 division. I said, don't cheat them out of the 2 cents. That is right. But the problem is the expense was passed to the counties. We have other things that are ordered by district judges. They have law that allows them to do that. So we had some increases there in those areas that they supervise. That concludes my opening statement to you. What we did the other day was we simply went up and down the row to see who wanted to speak. I just asked you if you rise and state your name and go ahead and tell us what you'd like to, and we'll do that.
Oh, here, Judge,
Sir?
here's another one.
T.P. Hillman, 3616 Alexander, Wichita Falls. I have a handout for each one.
I like your handouts.
They're informative.
They are
There we
informative.
go.
Thank you, sir.
And this is just a recap of pretty much what we worked on last week. Everything in red is a mistake. And needs correction on the budget cover page, and then on the recapitulation of the budget, there's several mistakes as well. And I hope that
That's
gets-
what we
We did that.
went through.
We won't go into details on that. The third page is one that I have a question on, is an explanation of the roll total taxable value versus the certified total value. And I understand that there's a consistency there, but I guess what I'm questioning is, why was it $75 million difference last year, and this year it's $112 million difference? Is it a percentage of the certified?
Yeah.
Say that again, Mr. Hillman, I didn't
It's the last
understand.
page.
Last page.
The
That was last year,
2018-29
and this is
budget
this year, between
had a difference in
tax
the
base
tax base certified of $75.6 million.
TIF.
This year, it's a difference of the tax base to the certified of $112 million. That's a lot of money to leave on the table that the county is not getting the money in the coffers to pay bills. Why is it
Which one's
increased
the,
almost $36.5 million in 1 year?
well, isn't that from the value? Am I reading it wrong?
That's from the appraisal district.
No, I'm saying he's taking the difference between $6.8 billion to $7.06 billion,
Yes,
and saying, why is it $112 million difference?
right.
Is that the question?
Well, it's $75 million in 2018-29 difference. This year, the difference is $112 million. And if it's a percentage of the certified total, then what is that percentage?
Well, you've got a lot of moving pieces there, Mr. Hillman. You've got, one, the city of Wichita Falls has TIF zones in place, 3 within the county. That is ever evolving, so there's a big change that happens there. The way that people, you sell your home that's exempt today, and Barry buys it and he's not, the taxes are froze, not froze, it really can jar that difference, but a lot of it's driven by appraised value,
Okay,
increased appraised value.
okay, and I understand that. But the difference from the tax base to the certified tax base was 1.1% of the tax base certified value last year. This year, it's going up to 1.6%, a whole 0.5% increase. That's a lot of dollars difference. Could anyone explain that?
Quantify that for me. I still don't follow the question.
Okay. The 2018-29 roll total taxable value was $6.8 million,
Correct.
$6.8 billion. the roll total taxable value in 2019-20 year is gonna be a little over $7 billion.
Correct.
If you take the tax roll, total taxable value of each year and determine the difference of that to the Wichita.
You got it there, Will. You got what I was, yeah.
In 2018-29, the difference
Yeah, go
of
ahead.
the tax rate certified
Okay,
value
go ahead. Will.
was $75.6 million. In 2019-2020, the difference in the tax base certified to the total taxable value is $112 million. Why would it go up $36.5 million in 1 year?
Well, because they increased the value of property in Wichita County.
That's fine, but the percentage went up as well. 1.1% last year, 1.6% this year.
Well, I mean, is there a rule that it has to stay within the same percentage year over year?
I'm just asking, what are the mechanics involved in a lot of money that the county could use that's going away somewhere?
But all of those questions, way past our pay grade, they all belong to the appraisal district and solely to the appraisal district. We have zero to do with these values.
The appraisal district makes a roll total taxable value?
Yes.
I haven't seen that from the appraisal district reports I've looked at.
Yes,
I've looked at the certified totals every year in the appraisal district, and I've never seen a roll total taxable value.
Willie, are
I've seen
you,
a net taxable value.
Yeah. Willie's got the appraisal.
Certified value is $7,173,356,397.
I'm not.
To that, add certified rolling stock values that are obtained from the controller's office. That's the freight trains and stuff.
Yeah.
$16,649,008. From that, that's in addition to the certified value. Then subtract from that tax increment financing captured value, which is $756,352. So the county taxable value is $7,061,249,653. So that explains why you have a difference between the certified value and the county taxable value.
Well, the certified value is a gross figure and the roll value is a net figure.
and
If
And
I
you understand,
it right.
Mr. Hillman, that like, for example, where the Lawrence Road area is at, those taxes, those property taxes froze in 2006, okay? But every year they went up. Now, that's certified value climbing for the county, but we only get this value down here in 2005, and we only get it for 20 years. We don't get any of this increased certified roll that's happening up here. The city of Wichita Falls is funneling that money into the TIF zone to do project, upgrade sewer and streets and water lines and water areas, helping with subdivision properties within business zones. All of that is built inside there, but it was one reason that that value would be X, but our value down here would only be Y. It would separate that.
That property's growing at a greater value, greater percentage.
It is the
than-
most, it's the highest valued property in the county too.
It just seems like the county is being penalized.
We are being.
We are being penalized, but it's our effort to help with economic development within the city, because we want the other chain stores to come. We want to help the city entice those businesses to come to our region. And the better we can make it, we're willing
The
to
real
help.
problem that we have with that also is that the city captures sales tax increases immediately, and we don't capture increases until the end of the TIF zone. So it puts us at a real disadvantage, a long-term gain, but not immediate return. It puts us at a disadvantage.
For instance, in Burke Burnett, Mr. Hillman, they have a TIF zone that's along the I-44 corridor. And it actually expired. And so the city council re-upped it, just did it again. That we are getting a $25 million facility built in our TIF zone because of the infrastructure we were able to put in, $350,000 worth of sewer lift equipment, stuff like that. So now, on the other end of the TIF zone, same TIF zone, we're getting a brand new car dealership out there. They bought 35 acres, and so it is gonna greatly increase our tax base there in Burke Burnett, and it helps the county too. But those tax dollars were frozen while it was farmland, okay? And now this $25 million facility is gonna be taxed at $25 million, but the county's gonna get the taxes off the farmland that was there. And all that other tax goes back into the TIF zone to further
Entice
perpetuate
further growth.
further growth in the TIF zone.
But you won't get the taxes,
Yeah.
you won't get the taxes off the farmland, you'll get the rollback actual value of the land rate.
Right.
It won't have
And-
the ag exemption.
Right.
Wonder who's building that dealership, Lee? Who could that be?
In tax
Why not let
tax
Pruitt do it?
increment financing, Mr. Hillman, the city and the county are the only participants. The school districts are excluded from that abatement that's given, or not abatement, but that game plan that's devised to help incentivize a region or area.
But see, we've had this discussion a while back, and one of the things it's making us do at the county is we're gonna have to reevaluate some of this
Yeah,
stuff
how we,
as we move
look at
forward.
TIF
Because,
zones.
once again, yes, we're pro-development. We wanna see the tax rate grow, but it puts us in a really tough cash flow situation, while you're doing it. So we're gonna,
Even with abatements.
I was gonna say, and yeah, abatement's the same way. Do you really wanna do abatement? Mr. Jackson mentioned, solar farm here the other day, you know, of course, yes, there's one in the works, and, but I don't know how interested we are in doing abatements on something like that. That's something we're really gonna have to
We need the
study.
money.
We're gonna have to study that, and especially when you gotta go provide infrastructure to get the thing up and going. So that's something we're gonna reevaluate a lot tougher in the future than what we've done.
Well, it just looked like, you know, the $36.5 million was not available to the county that should have been.
But that was the increased value.
Yeah.
And I've answered that. Thank you.
All right.
But-
Judge Keith?
I'll be as brief as I can, because usually I address you guys during our workshops. I didn't get notice of a workshop this year. I think y'all may have handled it a little bit differently. So let me just begin by thanking y'all for your work. You guys are the policymakers for the county. You have a difficult, probably thankless job, but I'm gonna thank you for your efforts to this point, and I know there's still work to do between now and finalizing the budget here shortly. And some little things, thanks for the raise for the court reporter. I lost a court reporter in July to another rural county that's actually paying her more, but I was able to hire one, and hopefully this will retain Vanessa. She's been our longtime sub for about 20 months or so. All the judges and the other court reporters know her and like her, and I think she's going to be excellent.
And they're hard to find now, aren't they?
Pardon?
Aren't they hard to find now?
They are extremely hard to find. You're
And your survey that y'all collectively kind of showed us at the bottom of the pile.
correct, right. Thanks to the chairs too for the jury box.
Yeah.
I know it's a small thing, but we don't want anybody rolling off that step and
Right.
hurting themselves, and I don't think the new ones will roll, so we don't have to worry about that. Thank you for clarifying on the longevity pay increase. That is exactly an unfunded mandate from Austin, and you called it right. I do want to thank you for increasing my court coordinator, Gail Kennedy's pay, or suggesting that it be voted on by the Commissioners Court to do that. I'm here primarily because I'm a little concerned your increase was that $1,000 less than the district courts, and this is my pitch to explain why I don't know if that's appropriate in this particular case. You can look at it three ways when you're setting salaries, and I think the easy one, the lazy one, is seniority. If you went the seniority route, Karen would be the highest paid, Gail would be the second highest paid, and then the three that followed her, who are all helping out the district judges. The salary survey is something else we did. I brought another one in case y'all don't have it. For similarly sized counties, may I approach and drop those off with you? Again, you should have already got this one. I think I dropped this off with Mr. Wall. Our average ours is significantly below the average, and if you toss out the highest and the lowest, then we're still way below average. The modified average, if you drop the high and the low, is 55,636.
There's a court reporter makes $92,000.
No, there's a court coordinator.
Court coordinator.
Court coordinator, okay.
I do want, in the interest of candor, I do want to tell you that the one in Grayson County helps both county courts at law in Grayson County. Now, I don't know if they do family law. I don't know exactly what their jurisdictions are. Each one is set statutorily. And so, so the third way to look at an employee is effectiveness. And again, I am not trying here to criticize any of the other coordinators, the other judges at all. I'm here to say nice things about my coordinator because she does a fantastic job. She manages the criminal docket. Y'all know that we have pending in our court right now 956 misdemeanors. The DA's office has filed 4,220 misdemeanors in County Court at Law number 2 during 2016, 17, and 18. Judge Butler's probably had more than me. So that just tells you a little bit about the volume that we handle. About 1,407 cases per year filed in the court that need to be disposed. About half of these have pending felonies. One thing that has helped the budget is Gail has figured out that the misdemeanors usually get handled after the felonies. And so what she has been doing is not setting those cases for hearing, except in appropriate cases, because she doesn't want lawyers showing up, making a wasted trip to the courthouse, and then billing the county for it. So that means court-appointed attorney's fees are down, and it's also better for everybody involved. There's less of a crowd. We can clear through the docket quicker. The DAs can get back to work on the intake faster. So that's a benefit that she has brought as part of her job. Another thing is, remember that the district court coordinators do not handle the coordination of the felony cases. That's handled by our excellent court administrator's office. We have 4 really good ladies there. They have another job too. They manage the indigent defense applications, which have to be promptly looked at. So that's not their only job. But remember, the county court at law coordinators, Karen and Gail, are doing all the high volume misdemeanor criminal settings, and that's something that the district court coordinators don't have to do, whatever our structure is. And the district court's volume, those are more serious cases, but the scheduling of them is just like scheduling misdemeanors. Their volume is at about 541 felonies on average per court for each of the last 3 years. There were 4,873 felonies filed in 16, 17, and 18. So if you divide that by 3 years, by 3 courts, that's where I came up with that 541. Gail helps manage the jail population. Every morning she looks at who got arrested, who's able to bond out, and she is there giving me a weekly report so that I can either schedule jail runs, or she does that automatically, or give these guys PR bonds if they're not dangerous to the community and they're not a flight risk. Why is that important? Because it costs money to keep people in jail. So we don't want to lock up people when they're presumed to be innocent, charged with a nonviolent offense, and not likely to flee the jurisdiction. Right. So that helps save costs that you guys are having to be good stewards of. She manages the civil docket. If I may approach again, I got another deal. our court, you've heard me say it, it's been 2 years and 4 months since I've been up here to talk about this. I'm gonna need one of those, Mark.
Sure.
Thank you, appreciate it, sorry. We have an extremely efficient docket. We are sitting at 250 pending cases, I believe, right now. Since I took office, I've reduced that by slightly over 50%. I was lucky, I inherited Judge Backus's docket, it was the smallest docket in the courthouse. I give him and the prior coordinator credit for that. But you can see what's happening, the filings in the district courts, or the number of, these are not filings, these are the number of pending cases, is on the increase in those district courts, whereas Judge Butler's basically been able to reduce his just slightly, and we've done that 50% reduction. And Gail deserves a huge hunk of the credit for that, because we have a very detailed system for doing docket control orders, setting hearings, final hearings as quick as we can. And of those 250 cases, I bet 50 of them are over a year old. Everything else is less than a year, 12 months old probably. And about probably 40% of those cases are either with the cluster court, the associate judge upstairs who handles CPS cases, Judge Bondurant, or downstairs with the child support court, Judge Dockery. So we get great help from them. I'm grateful to have their assistance. And I've been able to help try cases for the other courts as a result of our court running so efficiently. So Gail deserves huge credit for that. And then the probate docket's important too. She doesn't do anything with mental health. That is run very smoothly by the two ladies that work as probate clerks for Lori Bohannon. So Gail doesn't really have to touch those. She just blocks off a time on the calendar each week to hear those. But Gail does help track the due dates for inventories in guardianships and estates. She helps with making sure annual accounts get filed timely. She helps with getting annual reports in guardianships filed timely. And that's important too, because if, as probate judges, we don't do that, if we are grossly negligent in that, we can be sued. Y'all have to pay for a bond for us every year.
Yep.
I don't want to be sued on that bond.
No.
And God willing, 8 years I haven't been sued on it yet, and hopefully I won't, because I can have personal liability in addition to bringing the liability on the county. So that's why we have a system. And then Gail's latest thing is helping me, the legislature passed a deal, all guardianships have to be registered with OCA, the Office of Court Administration in Austin. We have a system in place where we're getting those done. We're notifying all the guardians, so that we're complying with that as best as possible. Gail works with the civil section in the DA's office to monitor the bond forfeiture docket. We don't have a single bond forfeiture over, you have to let them pen for a while because that gives the sureties an opportunity to get the guys rearrested and brought back in. But as soon as that, I can't remember, I think it's 9 months, that period passes, we set them for a final hearing, and LaDonna Bedford from the DA's office, the DA's secretaries, other than her, and certainly the civil attorneys over there, they get those taken care of. They either settle them or get them tried, and that's why we are on top of those. And that's good because it gives us a little revenue, the court costs for you guys, for the general revenue fund, I believe, and it also holds the bonding companies accountable. You know, they're bonding all these people out making money, but when they don't get somebody to court, they need to be held accountable.
Absolutely.
And she also helps with the juvenile docket. We promptly set things for adjudication hearings or trial after juvenile cases are filed. We don't have hardly anything old in those cases. Gail's great with public relations. She takes a lot of phone calls. If she can't help people, she refers them to the department that can help. She's great with juries. We've only had 2 jury trials this year because for whatever reasons, but we had 10 last year. She does a great job with the Venira panels and with the jurors. And don't forget, she was a subject matter expert on the Odyssey conversion. She was heavily involved in that process, and she probably, as much as anybody, is using the new Odyssey system. I mean, she's really trying to buy into it as best as possible, and it hadn't. The conversion obviously was difficult for a lot of departments, and we had our share of bumps, but you know, it's working as best as possible. So again, if y'all had done your workshop, you wouldn't have heard my pitch this year, but I just didn't want y'all to think that she's worth $1,000 less than those district court coordinators, because in my estimation, she's a very valued Wichita County employee. She helps me out certainly, and through that process, I can help serve the citizens, and so thank you for letting me say my piece.
Judge King,
Yes,
I
sir.
think we were just kind of following suit with the judges, you know, I think that was our mentality on that.
Yeah, yeah,
Well-
and that's why I wanted to make sure y'all understood. There's some overlap with what the district court coordinators do, and there's some ways that, you know, she manages a large mystery
Volume.
docket.
Well,
Spends a lot of time on it.
honestly, Judge King, one of the things we're gonna have to eventually invest in, because when we hit closer to that 80 cents, then we're gonna need more gals, so we don't want to lose her. The $1,000 difference thing was kind of a thing I developed years ago, and then we lost it for a while, got it back this year. And we send out notices, ask people to sign up. We don't, some of the budgets are very straightforward, so we didn't see a reason to ask somebody to come in unless they wanted to. So maybe we need to make that a little more pointed effort, so you're not coming in here towards the last of the time when we've got the tax rate out there is what it's gonna be, because my personal feeling is ethically, not necessarily legally, but ethically, that's set. I don't want to go above that, and there's not a lot of slack in it. And since the time this got out, the number of people now that have come in and all of a sudden said, wait a minute, you know, you all raised the people at the bottom of the pay scale to $30,000. Now that meant my person who's been there 3 years is only making $900 a year more than them. Well, you know, no good deed goes unpunished.
And that's what you guys, that's why I started out saying, you guys have a thankless job. There's huge numbers of needs and limited resources, and so that's where the rub is, and frankly, you guys are where the tire hits the road, and I wouldn't want your job, but I commend you for taking it on and being good stewards of our county tax dollars, and that's all I have to say.
But, you know, as we go down this road, especially probably in the next 3 years, we're going to have to look at some of our practices and see what that does. You know, the number of court security officers we've added over the last 3 years is a significant amount of money, because they're some of the higher paid, they're law enforcement, and even they, if you look around, it gets pointed out to me that, you know, a Clay County a Clay County detention officer
Oh, yeah.
makes considerably more. Now, the thing you've got to look at is all Clay County detention officers make the same thing, whether they've been there 1 year or 10 years, is the way I understood it from Sheriff Lemons. But it is higher.
Well, I just see part of my role, and this is the least favorite part of this job for me. I love sitting in court and doing what I do.
The law.
But I do think we have to be able to have dialogue.
Yes.
As a department head, as elected officials, and I know you guys understand, because I come see you about every 2 years and make basically this pitch, and I just thought it was appropriate to do it tonight, so I thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, and thanks for what you do for us.
Judge, I've got a quick question.
Absolutely.
What drives the totaling of this in early 10 years? Like civil cases in district courts, what makes that number higher? And
Yeah.
years relatively stayed flat, but what's the nature of what's going on that causes that to happen?
I don't know for sure. I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you about some ideas that I have about it. I can only speak to what I control, which is my docket, and I can tell you, we have a system, and it's a mission for us.
It's obvious, yeah.
We have great joy. We've basically, if you look at my numbers over 10 years, and I can bring those numbers to you if you just want to have lunch or sit down and chat. I started at 511, got it down to about 250, and it's been between 210 and 270, 280 ever since the policies we put in place took effect. And, I mean, to me, it's teamwork. It's buying into what you gotta do. Judge McKnight, he thinks, and he's pretty sure his numbers are under 900. He's already knocked about 200 cases off his docket. He and Carol are working hard with a dismissal for want of prosecution docket. That's an effective tool that probably is maybe underutilized in courts across the state, but it's very much utilized in the county court of law number 2. The lawyers know if they haven't resolved the case by 10 months, we give them a deadline to resolve it or it's going to be dismissed. And as a result, that you teach people how to treat you. It's
Sure.
kind of I think what Dr. Phil says.
Yeah.
And,
They wouldn't drag their feet, would they, Judge?
well, it depends on the lawyers. Some of them are great, and some of them, it does take some kicking in the tail.
Yeah.
But we got a good bar, but the court sets the tone. We're definitely court-driven as far as our docket. We don't let the lawyers drive the docket. It's Gail and I that are driving the dockets.
Very good.
There's some other more subtle things we'll talk about too, if you don't mind. So anything
We
else?
appreciate the help.
Thank you,
Thank
Judge.
you, Judge, appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Judge.
Y'all ever have any questions? I'll answer.
All right.
I'm just asking Gail.
That's good.
Mr. Robinson, you're next.
I was gonna try and help answer his question on this.
Oh, okay.
On my appraisal, I had 2 different exemptions. I had one from a homestead exemption, and I had another one from a disabled veteran exemption. But I also live in a trailer house. So every year, my house depreciates. Well, part of my house is a trailer house. So every year, my house depreciates. And with my 2 exemptions, I ended up only paying $27 a year on taxes. Okay? So that might help you a little bit understand why there can be an appraisal value, but the tax value, and if there's there are a bunch of disabled veterans in this community. And so their taxable value and the tax value, and if, again, they have the homestead exemption, that can be $20,000 difference on the value of the house.
But the Wichita Appraisal District, the net taxable value accounts for all
Yeah,
exemptions.
it does.
Okay.
But it's part of the logic that you brought up, that you start here and you think, wow, that's really good. And then, years ago, I did a review of all of our exemptions. And if you got rid of all the people who have tax exemptions, and I'm really not talking about your homestead exemption, I'm talking about the exemptions, not even the ag land, because that's a very complex thing, but just all of the nonprofits and all them, you could lower the tax rate by 17 cents. Now, I don't think many of us want the Boy Scouts paying property taxes. But if they have a dwelling and they have something, and more so for cities than for the county, because they're not out in the county. But there ought to be some kind of a payment for city services, maybe in lieu of taxes, because they expect the firemen to show up, they expect the police, they expect the roads to be repaired in front of their place. I mean, there might be considered some two-way responsibility there.
Well, then you get into the churches and all that.
Well, I'm saying the same thing. That church expects that fire department to show up. They expect law enforcement to be there if they have a problem. So, I mean, they're a draw on the resources, but we as a society have decided that all of us will cover that for a few. But, when you ask me about why taxes are, every time you and I are both disabled vets, when they gave the deal of 100% tax exemption, that cost Wichita County nearly, it was over $100,000 in actual cash. And one of the houses that got 100% exemption was a good friend of mine's, a 100% disabled vet, he's in the top most expensive homes in Wichita County.
Well, I need to go back and look at that, because I think they're still just taxing me, even though I'm at 100% unemployability. They're still taxing me, just the
We need your $27.
Maybe,
I kind of wish that the state legislature, when they get ready, and I'm all about honoring our veterans, I certainly am, but I wish whenever they get these bright ideas to honor the veterans, they would give them an exemption on
Sales
sales
tax,
tax and
yeah.
lay off the property taxes, and it might be beneficial for both parties.
I brought that up at Senator Duncan, and he said,
Yeah.
oh, no, don't do that. Well, yeah, well,
That
Robert,
might be a
that's
better
your,
exemption anyway, to
Yeah.
get right down to it.
well, sure would. Okay. Ma'am, you had signed up to speak.
Yes, sir, I did. I'm actually contemplating a conversation that Mr. Watson's having, so my mind is actually focused on Mr. Potts at the moment. I'm intrigued by what you were explaining regarding the tips. And so am I to understand that y'all have made an arrangement with the city of Wichita Falls that you would agree to give up some funding so that they may pursue economic growth, correct?
Yes.
I mean, in a nutshell,
In-
that's what
Right.
Yes, in certain boundaries, like in Wichita Falls, the Lawrence Road area is a TIF zone. Downtown, as you know what the new downtown area is, that's a TIF zone. And then there's another zone over on the east side that makes up the business corridor mostly of Martin Luther King and such, and that's the third TIF zone. So all of those areas, and only within the boundaries of those areas, and decided by a board that governs the TIF zone as to how to appropriate the money collected. And common practice in the city of Wichita Falls is to to understand what the goal would be that you'd want to accomplish. You've only got 20 years to do it. Now, your money comes in each year, not all in one lump sum. So a lot of times the city of Wichita Falls will borrow the money and then pay it back over 20 years with the taxes that come in each year. They'll make that payment, but then that way they can move on and go ahead and do that particular project that may be allocated. Like downtown, they're wanting to upgrade the sidewalk facilities in downtown Wichita Falls in that TIF zone. The money's not great, it's not huge. The properties don't just continually do this, they gradually do that. Lawrence Road, they jump pretty hard. So there's a lot of good money there in that zone to develop with, but the other two zones struggle a little bit having the revenue to do the, projects that they'd really like to do. And each board then also, typically, the city kind of, the theory has been, let's leave some money back because you may want to come into the zone and do a business, and we may want to help you with that business. So if we can retain some of that money, then we could allocate you money to do a renovation to a Vent-A-Hood or do a renovation to a particular piece of your business or help you with a piece of that.
Burkett, they did parking lots. They put
Maybe
concrete
help you
parking
get
lots.
started or upgraded.
Get some fire
And so
suppression
that's
systems
a
down
common
there.
theme in that zone, and Burke's the same, so.
And generally, once you get one started, you get an anchor business in place, and then it grows
Yeah,
off
it
of
helps.
that, which is what happened on Lawrence Road. That's been the goal of the project on the east side, and now they've got, is that a Family Dollar or a Dollar Saver?
Dollar
General.
Dollar General,
Family Dollar, yeah.
I confused the two. It has not brought the other activity that we had hoped. I serve on that board, but at least it's a start, and there's still time. It could go ahead and generate maybe a gas station next door, maybe a grocery store, I don't know, something. But that's the goal, is if you can get one good anchor business started, a lot of times you can redevelop the neighborhood.
The other thing, you said some kind of an agreement. These type of programs, whether it's tax increment financing or payment in lieu of taxes, these are all covered by state law. We don't just go dream up, this would be a good idea for us to do.
Right.
It's all done in accordance with state law that has guided that. It was just reviewed by the legislature whether they wanted to continue, and they kept those programs alive.
So you were required to give up?
No, ma'am.
county
No, ma'am,
No,
we
no.
volunteered to do it.
Yeah.
We agreed, but that agreement is set up by state law. But one of the things we're looking at is maybe participating, but not at the 100% of that level. You can put a portion of that increase into that zone. And so, let's say if something's worth $100 a day and in 2 years it's 150, and you only participated at the 50% level, then that base is going to grow, which is going to make a whole lot of fun for calculating that TIF base.
Yeah.
But, there are other ways to do it that will allow the county to receive some income that historically we had not taken, but still be a partner with the city.
One of the lessons we've learned too now is that as those areas take off, like Lawrence Road, and properties begin to change hands, it gets very complicated to stay on top of who qualifies for what at what level.
As they subdivide. And
Yeah, we've learned that lesson the hard way. It's an accounting nightmare, but.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir. Go
Were
ahead.
you aware that we had TIF zones in our county?
No, actually, I returned back home to Wichita Falls about a year and a half ago, because I didn't want to die in Dallas.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going home, we'll be very happy. There's no way.
But Steve is on our city council, and he can explain all of those TIF zones and stuff. They all help try to build our tax base, and it's a very good tool to do.
Right. I think my concern is that, is the county suffering at slow economic growth? It's not really,
Well, we certainly lose the revenue for that 20-year period of time, so, I mean, that is hurtful, but at the same time, we hope that, we're going to have the windfall at the end of the 20-year period with improved properties that come back onto the roll at full value at that time, that generate and help alleviate some of the pain.
Well, there's adjacent development with the Lawrence Road TIF. They're building the new hotel just right outside the TIF.
Yeah.
That we'll get
And we'll get,
benefit off of.
Yeah.
It
Probably
should
would
be
not
an
happen.
investment. It really should be. Sometimes, some of them work better than others, but you
Yeah.
like to think of it as a long-term investment.
so okay. So if a well-established business were to come into one of the TIF zones, would the county, you gentlemen, have some say in that business?
No.
No.
In pushing it along, because I mean, it is partially your funding then.
No, as long as now they could come to the zone, bear in mind that, so if I start my zone in 2005, it's going to end in 2025, and the comptroller is not very lenient on renewing the TIF for an additional 20 years. It happens, but very rarely.
we did it.
So,
When is your TIF? When are the?
Started in 2006.
and the Lawrence Road is about that old. Downtown's not very old, 2015, but maybe East Side's 2010, 9.
But let me see if I'm maybe understanding you right. I have an existing business here. The TIF zone's over here, the boundary for it. Unless there's a new TIF zone created, I'm never going to be there. Now, if I move my business
Move there.
inside here, I'm still going to pay the same taxes on the value of it that I paid over here, because it's tax increment financing. It's not any kind of an abatement to move my business into there and get a reduction in
Money's
property
still being
taxes.
paid, it's just not coming to the county.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that what I'm hearing is the point of the TIF zones is to give an opportunity for those areas to expand in their economic development.
Well,
Correct?
yes, but what
Correct.
it's also do, that tax increment finance is the primary use of that, and Lawrence Road is such a good example. The widening of Lawrence Road, the building partnership with Walmart, and they partner with the apartments that are coming in to the west there. And when you come across Maplewood, instead of that being going down to 2 lanes, it's going to be widened and carry all the way over to McNeil.
The realignment of the Caulfield Ray Lawrence intersection
Right.
was the
That
one
was-
that sparked
yeah.
a lot of the development. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened without the TIF.
So your portion is more so the environment of those areas, not necessarily the
The
businesses.
businesses.
Correct.
It is the infrastructure that the
Infrastructure.
businesses need.
More so than anything,
We
yeah.
don't want to be involved in running somebody's business. That's
No,
not
but
what
if
we do.
businesses came in and they were refused,
Unless it was a liquor store.
that would have
Well,
nothing to do with it.
Like some of the downtown businesses in the downtown TIF, I know that they've been granted some funding to,
Yes, sir.
If you operate a business in a TIF zone, do you get any preferential treatment from the Wichita Appraisal?
None.
None.
You're praised at full value.
value.
Yeah.
Well,
full
they
value.
can't give anybody preferential treatment.
By law.
And
And they get
they
in
have got to
trouble if
stay,
they're-
they've got to stay in those boundaries
That's right.
of the valuation of that property of
95%.
95 to 105% of fair market value.
Graded by the state, Mr. Hillman,
Yeah.
on that.
Everybody thinks that the appraisal district works for the county. They do not.
no, they're standalone.
They are standalone and they answer to the state, period.
Well, I've done some research on that. It's probably another conversation that I've done about a 10-year study. And it's very interesting data that I'd like to share some other time.
I'd like to see it.
Well, Commissioner Watts serves on that board. As county has an appointed representative, and Mr. Smythe serves as an ex officio member on that board.
I have been, Mr. Hillman, since 2000 on the board, and through Eddie Trigg's term as chief appraiser, and then now Lisa Music is there, and she's well versed, and she spoke, we listened to her at the convention speak with Harris County. They asked her to come and do her presentation because we're a high-rated, high-graded appraisal district in the state. They meet all their mappings. They score 100% on the map test. So it's just, they're proud of the work they do, and they're a pretty dedicated bunch. You know, they buy into what they do very solidly.
You know,
So-
and interestingly enough, I'm fortunate enough to own several properties. And I look at my appraisals and I look at them very hard. And I got my new ones here, everybody, when it was several months ago, sat down and looked at them. And you know, there's not one property I own that I would sell for what it's appraised for, except one. I had one and I sold it a month ago. And I thought, you know, if that's where it is, I don't need to own it anymore. But I mean, I think my appraisals are very, very.
I'm with you. I wouldn't,
I wouldn't sell any of them for what.
I
they're
wouldn't
appraised.
sell my stuff for what
Wouldn't
they're
think about it.
appraised at. No way.
Not at all. But other than that one, and I got rid of it, so I don't have it anymore.
Who all's on that board with you, Jeff?
Well, they're broke up by areas, Steve, so I represent City View and the county. And then the county has, we have a rep that came on from the county as a whole, school district, the city of Wichita Falls, Iowa Park, Electra, Burke.
Okay, man.
No.
But there's people, they're not city officials. They're the public that are representing those entities. So like,
Yeah.
I know one guy, he owns funeral home. What's his name? Craig Cassey.
Yeah.
He serves on there. And he's
Well,
on farm.
he's on the review board.
Oh, he's on the review
Yeah.
board.
Jeff was on that committee
Okay.
before he became commissioner. He'd been on it for.
Yeah, and Steve, I came to the appraisal district from the Iowa Park School Board, and then the City View and the county put me on as their rep when we asked Iowa Park, you know, you want to replace Jeff and move him around, so that's what's.
So you're the one I get the blame for going up so much on my property.
No, I don't have anything to do with those. We're outside that mix. They wouldn't call, you know, it's against the law. It's against the law for me to call Lisa and say, Mr. Hillman said his property was higher than his neighbor. Lisa, can you tell me why? You know, that only in the last 4 years now makes it against the law for me as a board member to do that. Now, I can call one of the other guys in the office and ask that, but I can't ask the chief appraiser that.
About 25 years ago, I served on the appraisal review board, and that's where I got interested in county government. That was my first exposure, was serving on that board. It was a very, very interesting experience.
And
learned a lot.
And understand that the way that it worked prior to that, and I was always close to that endeavor from Iowa Park, but the man I knew the longest, Bill Steger, was a tax appraiser for Iowa Park. Every entity had their own. So they go to your house, Steve, and, you know, Mr. Smith, that say he's the appraiser for City View, he comes by and looks at your stuff and says, oh, Steve's a good guy, you know, I make his house, he's worth $5,000. So school's gonna tax you based on a $5,000 house, but he goes next door, well, he's had a run-in with Mr. Jones next door. Well, Mr. Jones' house, probably it could bring $35,000. So that's what you used to have, and in the 70s then, the state said,
The city would come by and have a different opinion.
in 1979, the state said, here's what we're gonna do, and here's the game plan, and everybody in Texas is going to praise the same way. And so now, the state even comes in and they look at Lisa's work and say, Lisa, prove up to me that the taxpayers in Burke Burnett are paying their fair share of value for their properties in that area. And so here are the sales, and here's what we're taxing for, and that better be within a 5% margin, or the school district's gonna lose funding.
Steve, do you think your property's overpriced?
Ain't no doubt in my mind.
Did you file an appeal?
Yes, I did. Got a lawyer to do.
So you'd sell it for what it's appraised for?
Yep.
I've not had
How
that.
can you, 4.52 acres since 2005 was $2,752. 2017, you went up to 17,000. It was appealed, they wouldn't listen. This year it's over 18,000.
For the whole 5 acres?
Way you can get through that is one driveway, and on the south side's irrigation ditch. You know exactly where.
Yeah,
So it's 4.5 acres?
yeah.
Is that house in acres or just acreage?
There's a house, that's just the acreage, 4.52 is just 18,000.
18,000.
On the acreage.
And there's no access unless you go into the home in front.
Oh,
of the
yeah.
property.
And-
Jeff knows exactly where.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
I have,
landlocked.
you know, I have a deal in Iowa Park I noticed, and I talked to Eddie Trigg about this. I bought a tax lot back a few years ago in Iowa Park, and the value set across the board, and all those neighborhood up there, that value's like $5,700 for a lot. Well, you know, I bought it for $200, and I'm like, Eddie Trigg, I'm paying $5,700 for this lot value? Well, he said, you know, that's what all the neighbors are paying too. I wouldn't buy another one for that kind, but now the neighbor may not sell his for that, and his looks better than mine. Mine's a vacant lot, you know, but I still am assessed that. So that kind of gets difficult and tricky.
The values from the appraisal department is not going to be what your value is when you go to sell the property, right? Because what an appraiser comes out
Should
to
be
appraise-
close, you'd hope,
Close,
but
but not always necessarily, because if you're receiving a home loan, they have to send out the inspector and the
Right.
appraisal.
Yep.
That's not the same appraiser.
No.
That's a licensed appraiser, not one with certification.
yeah,
Totally different ballgame.
totally different. Usually a better value from the guy that the bank sends, gonna get a higher rate than, look at a little more, different comparables.
Well, they have the vested interest.
Yeah,
Yeah, get ready to say.
Yeah.
The acre where I live now, Jeff, you know where I'm living.
Uh-huh.
I buried you too.
I do.
Was a repo from the city, and I bought the acre lot from the city. Then moved the house in.
All right. We're kind of deviating a little bit from our deal, but we do appreciate you all coming.
You know, this situation was very,
Mr. Hart,
Yes, ma'am.
referring to your question and/or statement a few minutes ago with him, since returning home, you're probably going to see a lot more of me up here getting involved. I do one footnote, that he and I are separate entities. Our brains function completely different. So,
You look a lot better, ma'am. I always say that too.
I did want to make that because I have a hard time, people want to think that I follow. I'm
Well-
educated, I have my mind.
I really didn't even know that you were married until I was telling you that Steve was on our city council.
Well,
Judge-
she hadn't been very
Judge-
long,
Judge
so-
put the paper over there and he said, last name's Jackson Lee. I went, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I didn't really
No,
do that to you.
no, we want involvement. It's always good when we hear from the public.
The problem's when nobody comes and shares anything. That's
Right.
When you've got problems, if you can have a discussion.
But after the meeting was over, Barry, I need to talk to you for a few minutes.
Are you buying?
No kidding.
Okay, it's 7:03 and we're adjourned.
This has to do with some other stuff.
All right.
Well, good, because I got